Включайте.
Ну и кому нужен перевод, уже можно переключаться. Уже появилась кнопка перевода на панели. Нужно на эту кнопку нажать и выбрать русский язык.
Слышим, хорошо. Преданные, кто первый раз подключился и не знает, как включить синхронный перевод, вот здесь справа внизу появилась кнопка «Перевод». Туда нажимаете, и там выбираете русский, и вы будете синхронный перевод по-русски слушать. Вдруг кто-то...
Начинается?
Да, Матаджи Премика, вы написали, что нам так и не подключить перевод. Сейчас можете подключить. Если вдруг будут какие-то проблемы, сообщите, пожалуйста. Все слышно, хорошо.
Начинаю. Начинаю.
Мы можем начинать, Гуру Махарадж. Guru Maharaj, we can start.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shnivadi Paskyatyade Siddharane. So welcome everyone. This talk is about book distribution. And Srila Prabhupada was very much anxious that his books are distributed as widely as possible, because there is no difference between Krishna, Krishna's name, Krishna's form, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's associates, and Krishna. They're all simultaneously one with some distinction. And our goal in life is to become conscious of Krishna. To become conscious of Krishna begins with hearing about Krishna from the right source and the right attitude, with the right attitude. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada's books tell us about Krishna, tell us about who we are, and tell us about how we can revive or reawaken our original consciousness of Krishna, our relationship with Krishna. Krishna consciousness is a product of having the right activity with the right, under the right guidance, with the right understanding and the right mood. Or as Krishna says, Tesham Sadatam Yuktanam Bhajantam Priti Purvakam Didami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenamam Upiyanti Te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. In other words, and at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna that anyone who studies this conversation, they worship me by their intelligence. So this intelligence called Buddhi Yoga is not ordinary intelligence. It's intelligence of seeing things through the eyes of scripture, seeing things through Krishna's eyes. In other words, seeing things as they actually are, rather than as we're seeing them being influenced by the material energy. So if one can see things like as they are, then naturally as Prabhupada writes, the influence of the material nature gradually ceases. And we're able to come back to our original consciousness again, as Arjuna and Sanjaya came back to their original consciousness at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada wanted everyone to have the opportunity to hear about Krishna in order to understand who Krishna is, who they are, and what is the process by which they can reawaken their relationship with Krishna. Unless people have this information, then they're forced to act according to the modes of material nature as given to us or directed to us by blind people. So in modern society, practically everyone is blind because they're being guided by blind authorities, by blind people. Andaya tandira upagiyamanas te pisha tantra urudami bada. Ite vidu swartagatim hi Vishnu. People don't know that the aim of life is to obtain Krishna. Instead, Durashya Yebahya Artamanina, they're taking insignificant things as being most important. Namely, how to perfect our lives in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. These have become very important in modern society. And they're being presented to us without any dharma. In other words, eating, sleeping, mating, defending are certainly necessary for material existence, but they should be done with a goal in mind. In other words, once you know why we're eating, why we're sleeping, why we're mating, why we're defending, why we're doing everything, we should know what the purpose of the human form of life is. But people are blind to the purpose of life, and they've chosen blind leaders who are similarly blind to the purposes of life. And therefore, in every field of activity, people are working blindly, even in the most practical fields like medicine, sociology, psychology, philosophy. In every field, people are blind because they don't know things as they actually are. Not only they don't know, but they develop faith in things that are actually godless, faith in the modes of material nature, that if we take shelter of blind people, then somehow or another we're able to cross the road safely. The example is given that if someone is crossing the road, if he has eyes, he can look both ways and he won't be in danger. But if one is blind, crossing a busy highway will put one in danger. If one knows one is blind and then chooses a leader to help them cross the road, but if that leader is equally blind, then both the leader and the follower of both will be both in danger. So anyone who doesn't see things in Krishna consciousness must be blind. It is not simply a statement, it is a fact. From the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has explained that we're in material bodies that constantly change, but we ourselves are not changing. So this is a reality. It is not simply an idea that our bodies are changing. It's our most immediate experience. And the idea that we ourselves are not changing, we all have personal experience of that also. So this is not just sentimental faith, it's actually science. From the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking science. For instance, he says, I enter into the planets and by my energy, they stay in orbit. We can perceive in this world that the material nature is not working haphazardly or whimsically. It's working under control, superior intelligent control that could only be manifest or only could be done by a supremely intelligent person. In other words, Bhagavad Gita is based upon some very simple principles. If we understand the simple principles, then everything else will become very evident. And if we don't accept from the beginning the understanding that we're not this body, that there is a person who's in control of the universe, everything is moving in his direction. The material nature is consisting of different energies, some of which can liberate us and some of which can bewilder us. And it's our choice to be under the energy that will liberate us or the energy that will bewilder us. And that basically speaking, our whole problem is that we've forgotten who we actually are, what our relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is, and even what our actual relationship between Krishna and his different energies are with us. Then instead of choosing the energy which will liberate us, that Krishna is offering us, we're choosing the energy that will bewilder us. So that's our choice. And that choice is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, in order to distribute this literature, one has to become qualified. But that qualification is not, at least not in the long run, simply to be a mundane salesman. Because what we're selling is basically three things: Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Vigraha. We're selling bliss, we're selling knowledge, eternal bliss and knowledge. And only if we understand that we're selling eternal bliss and knowledge in the form of Krishna can we actually be effective in spreading Krishna consciousness. So that eternal bliss and knowledge may not manifest ourselves all at once in our experience, but as Sri Rupa Goswami has said, that to be effective in anything we're doing in Krishna consciousness, we need basically three things. We need six things, he says. But anyhow, we can begin with the first three. Utsaha Nischaya Daryat. Utsaha means enthusiasm. So enthusiasm corresponds to bliss. It's the most basic principle. Spiritual enthusiasm is a basic element of happiness or bliss. And Utsa Nischaya. So Nischaya, conviction. So that's the basic principle of knowledge. Conviction doesn't mean fanatical conviction. It means realized knowledge, Vigyan. And Daryat means patience. So from the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is teaching us patience. That we're eternal is a basic principle of patience. If someone is eternal, they have a lot of time to do something. They don't have to be in a hurry. You have eternity to do it. And if you're eternal, that's one thing, but the other thing is that Krishna is the doer. He's the ultimate doer, and he does everything through his material nature. Therefore, one is observing Krishna's activities, and we don't have to second guess Krishna or tell Krishna he's doing something wrong, he should do it in a better way. We can understand, patiently observe how Krishna is working, and modify our desires to serve him accordingly. Our whole scriptures are filled with examples of very patient devotees. Prahlad Maharaj, he preached Krishna consciousness not only to his schoolmates, but also to his father. But he was patient. He didn't demand that his schoolmates become pure devotees, nor was he disappointed when his father tried to kill him. He didn't give up preaching, even to his father, thinking that this is a waste of time. Maybe I should go to some other planet and preach. No, he patiently waited for the opportune time. He understood that Krishna is the controller, and that when Krishna wanted, that everything would be adjusted properly. Similarly, the Pandavas were exiled in the forest for 14 years. They didn't complain. They knew it was all part of Krishna's plan. Therefore, they patiently waited. And whether they're in the forest or they're in the capital of Hastinapur, they were simply Krishna conscious, and they accepted everything as Krishna's arrangement. Although they were impassive, they did everything they could to serve Krishna, but they left everything up to Krishna, what the results would be. Therefore, if one goes on book distribution, one has to be patient. One has to understand that everyone is Krishna's servant. We're all eternal. If we can help people even to the slightest degree approach Krishna, then Krishna will be very pleased. But it's Krishna who's making the arrangements for our success and failure. undoubtedly he does that also on the basis of what we're desiring. If we desire to distribute the books, if we develop that desire, then Krishna will send people to take the books. But if Krishna sends people to take the books, and then we start taking the credit that I'm empowered, I'm so powerful, and that, Krishna is not, he should send more and more people, then Krishna may decide not to send anyone. If he sees that actually what's being developing in ourselves is not our pure devotion, but our false ego, Krishna may decide to help us develop patience so that we can stand there wherever we are for hours and no one will even look at us. So patience also means we have to accept that Krishna is the controller. We may be eternal, everyone's eternal. We may be doing the right thing, but Krishna will also teach us patience so that we can realize that whether many people take books or that no one takes the book, ultimately it's his desire. And he's manifesting his desire in order to help train us to become a better devotee, a better servant, one way or the other. But at the same time, we should have a clear vision of what we're trying to achieve. We should have a clear vision of who we actually are, who Krishna is, and who everyone else is, and how things work in the material world, so that we can actually become determined both in happiness and distress, both in honor and dishonor, both in victory and defeat. We can become determined to go on with our service with full conviction and confidence that ultimately Krishna is everywhere and that his will is what's being accomplished. That nothing is happening by accident. It's all happening under Krishna's desire. Then we can actually develop enthusiasm because we won't be disturbed in any circumstance. We can always fix our mind on Krishna and his service. Actually, it first comes from seeing things properly, getting the vision that he's the proprietor of everything and everyone. We're not there to either control the material nature, to enjoy the material nature, or to be the saviors of everyone. In the mode of ignorance, we think we're the controllers. We think we're the ones who are empowered to stop people on the street. We think we're the enjoyers, that the more book points they get, the more my fame is spread over the 3 zones. And then we think that we're the saviors, that by my power, my potency, I'm distributing so many books and saving so many living entities. So in ignorance, we think we're the controllers. In passion, we think we're the enjoyers. And in goodness, we think we're the saviors. But we're none of those things. They're all Krishna. Krishna is the controller, Krishna is the enjoyer, and Krishna is the savior. And we can become his instrument, the instrument for the previous acharyas, if we understand things properly and we have the determination to serve things and serve Krishna's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission with a proper attitude. Or as Prabhupada writes, endeavors executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called enthusiasm. So we need those things. We have to have the right endeavor, of which distributing Krishna consciousness is the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is the service to Lord Krishna in this age. It may be done in different ways, of which book distribution is a prominent way, but ultimately it's done should be done in every activity we're doing, is to glorify Krishna. So that's our endeavor. We have to know which endeavors will actually be appropriate. There are 9 activities of devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting and remembering. And then it should be done with intelligence. Krishna can give us the intelligence to see things properly so that we know how to do things with organization and intelligence. Organization means we make all the arrangements so we can apply Krishna's instructions in our lives. And when we do it in Krishna consciousness to please Krishna, then Krishna reveals himself to us, and that's called Krishna consciousness. And when Krishna reveals, when we remember Krishna with a proper devotional attitude, then we feel ecstasy. And Krishna puts us under the influence of his internal energy, and we become ecstatic. It's not our ecstasy, it's Krishna providing, giving us Ladini Shakti, the pleasure potency to one degree or another. And then we feel the ecstasy, and the people we come in contact will also, if they're receptive enough, will also feel some of that ecstasy also. And it's that enthusiasm or the ecstasy that actually distributes the books. Not just our great salesmanship or our fantastic appearance or our mystic potency, is actually the ecstasy that's been provided to us in our efforts to serve the mission of our acharyas and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as long as we remain humble and with the right attitude, knowing well that I myself am simply trying to revive my relation with Krishna, and in order to do so, I'm assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his instrument to help others revive their relation with Krishna. And at the end of the day, everyone, including myself, simply we have a relation with Krishna eternally. It's simply a question of developing it. It's not that I'm a special living entity who has a relation with Krishna and every other living entity is someone else who does, who's not quite up to my level. So everyone has a relation with Krishna. We're fortunate enough to have the opportunity to serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because of the mercy of someone else who is acting as an instrument for Krishna. And if we act as an instrument for Krishna, we can serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his efforts to give others an opportunity to revive their relation with Krishna also. And at the end of the day, we can all meet in the spiritual world together and discuss the sankirtana movement. So I'll stop there. I guess now you ask questions or something. Is that the plan? Proceed. Those Uchilas.
So how we can do this? They can raise hands or?
Дизнаем, yes.
Есть два варианта. Либо кто-то может просто написать в чат, либо просто задавать вопросы, а его святейшество Бхакти Ратнакара Амбариша Махарадж переведет.
Преданные, поднимайте руки, кто хочет лично задать вопрос, и тогда переходите в зал английского языка, и там задавайте вопрос. Либо пишите в чат. Теперь начинаются вопросы и ответы. Агнихотра, правда?
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж. Спасибо большое за вашу лекцию. Гуру Махарадж меня слышит же?
Да.
Я на английском, я на русском, но Гуру Махарадж меня слышит.
Сейчас не слышно.
Гуру Махарадж, you don't hear Матаджи Лавандавата, yes?
Да, не слышу.
Переходить ни на какой канал. Нужно просто задать вопрос на русском. Не нужно переходить на другой канал.
Можно на русском задавать.
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж, thank you for your class. Very not popular lecture in our time. Topic of lecture. And I have a question read in Russian and Ambrish Maharaj. Сейчас в России преданные вместо книг Шрилы Прабхупады распространяют книги психологов или популярных гуру ИСКОН вместо распространения книг Шрилы Прабхупады. С одной стороны, через популярных гуру и психологов приходит много людей в общество преданных. С другой стороны, не фокус на книгах Шрилы Прабхупады и его учения. Как правильно проповедовать в этом ключе и вот, по крайней мере, мы вот здесь собрались, и кто послушает эту лекцию, на чем нам сделать фокус в проповеди.
So Agnihotra Prabhu is asking about books of other authors. Like we have many devotees, psychologists who are very popular, and people are becoming attracted by their books and preaching. And we have also some gurus that are writing books, and their disciples, they are distributing the books of their gurus. So what should be the balance in order to attract people, how we can distribute Srila Prabhupada's books and also attract people because of this dilemma?
Well, hopefully books, other books attract people to read Prabhupada's books. There's only one philosophy. There's not many philosophies. Sometimes they may be explained in a way to encourage people to understand higher philosophy. But it's not like there can be many philosophies. There's not mundane psychology, even other approaches to the sequence of understanding Krishna consciousness. They generally are not quite valid in terms of our people actually developing Krishna consciousness. In other words, if we see how Prabhupada preached, he came to New York in 1966 or 65, and his audience is not much different from, in one sense, from people who have no knowledge of Krishna consciousness. He didn't come and preach to Brahmanas in New York City in 1965, nor they were Kshatriyas or even Vaishyas. They weren't even qualified as Shudras. And yet he raised some of them by his preaching to at least understand, after preaching for some years, how we're not this body and how there is a God, understand that much. Now, unfortunately, most people in Kali Yuga, they don't live very long. And if we try to take too much of an indirect approach, then the result is by the time they hear that they're not their body, they're already passed away to the next body. So I think the perfect example of how to approach systematically the preaching of Krishna consciousness is there in Prabhupada's example. Now, Prabhupada wanted his disciples to write books, but he didn't want them to write books which were not in harmony with his teachings or the teachings of our acharyas. He wanted them to write books that were appropriate for the time, place, and audience, that they could explain the same things that he was explaining, but just in a language would be appropriate for that audience. Now, if we start thinking that we're going to approach the same kind of audience that Prabhupada was preaching to in a way to bring them to at least a stage of understanding basically two things: the eternality of the self and the existence of Krishna and our relationship with him. If we think we're going to be able to do that in an indirect way, we may be wasting our time, we may be wasting their time, and we may be wasting their opportunity to actually become Krishna conscious. Just like Krishna has two things in Bhagavad Gita that he repeats. Actually, he repeats a number of things twice, but the two important things he repeats twice. One is everyone should know what their duty is and should do it, and that's someone else's duty. So that will lead to liberation, freedom from material consciousness. And the next thing he says, Krishna also mentions twice about we should engage ourselves in the process of pure devotional service by hearing about Krishna, by becoming his devotee, by worshiping him, by becoming humble and surrendering to him, by giving up things, unnecessary things, and gradually accepting what's necessary in Krishna consciousness. So there's a process. So for most people who are not ready to hear about Krishna regularly, they should at least be taught or introduced to certain conceptions that will help them understand, first of all, that they're not their body, the laws of karma, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, what karma is, what the Supreme Lord is, Ishvara, what the jiva is, what the laws of karma, what time is. These things are necessary to introduce to people. And if we don't introduce these 5 conceptions that Krishna introduces to the conditioned soul in the Bhagavad Gita, we'll probably just be wasting their time. We have something called bridge preaching. So bridges have 2 ends to them. They have one end and they have another end. So we think we have bridge preaching, and then we're standing on one end trying to get people over the bridge to Krishna consciousness. But often our bridges are made in such a way is that the devotees, instead of getting people to come over to their end, they wind up going over to the other end to bring them to our end, and they wind up staying on the end that they were, where the people were supposed to be bringing them over. They wind up being on the same end as the opposite end of where they're supposed to be. So this idea of bridge preaching, many times people don't cross the bridge, and those who cross the bridge cross it to the wrong end. So we have to be careful. The mode of goodness is good for people, but the mode of goodness in itself has no real value. It's just another mode of material nature. Just like if you want to fly from Moscow to St. Petersburg, or from St. Petersburg to Moscow, the easiest way of flying, at least, is to go to the airport. That's where the airplanes are. But if you simply go to the airport and you don't get on the airplane, then you'll never make it to Moscow from St. Petersburg. So we bring people to the mode of goodness, but they don't become transcendental, then we're just wasting our time. If they don't take up the teachings of Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, then we'll be wasting our time. And even if they take them up, if our idea was to enjoy in some mode of material nature, to utilize the teachings to enjoy nice family life, nice food, whatever else, then even they take up the Bhagavad Gita, often they only take it up in that mood. That is it's a tool for our material enjoyment rather than a tool for our transcendence. Therefore, Prabhupada didn't spend his time trying to attract people to the mode of goodness. He tried to spend his time attract people to Krishna consciousness. And in order to get there, the mode of goodness, the lifestyle and the mode of goodness is offered, not as a means for material enjoyment, but as a means of transcendence. But if we attract people to Krishna consciousness on the basis of enjoying the modes of material nature, in the most cases, that's what they'll take up Krishna consciousness. Even they get the Bhagavad Gita or chant Hare Krishna, but they'll take it up for material reasons, and our mission will just be watered down. Prabhupada gives the example of milk. If you have milk and you add water to it, then after a while you don't have milk anymore, you have colored water. More important with milk is to boil it so it becomes thick and sweet rather than just watering it down. So Prabhupada didn't water down the philosophy. He didn't try to reintroduce Krishna consciousness in a way which would be attractive to mundane people, offering them material sense gratification. That's there in the Vedas, but Prabhupada didn't come here to distribute the Vedas. He came here to distribute Krishna consciousness. The Vedas will not save anyone in Kali Yuga. Only directly developing faith in the holy name, the holy books, association with the devotees for developing Krishna consciousness, spreading Krishna consciousness and creating a spiritual atmosphere, and worshiping Krishna as God in the form of his deities forms. Those are the activities which will actually make a difference in people's spiritual life. Having a nice family life, learn how to cook nicely, even how to sleep properly. These in themselves are just, these material perfections will not save one in Kali Yuga. They're good if they're utilizing Krishna's service to help us transcend, but without that focus on transcendence, they actually become a waste of time. Does that answer the question?
Отвечает на вопрос.
Да, спасибо большое.
Hare
Амбриш
Давайте.
Махарадж, там Алексей Богатырь, он тянул
Да,
руку,
давайте.
возможно, он вживую хочет задать.
Давайте, Алексей, ваш вопрос, потом из чата будем брать.
Алексей, зададите вопрос ваш.
Харе Кришна, дорогой Гуру Махарадж, мои поклоны, пожалуйста, примите.
Задавайте, да, вопрос.
Слышно вас?
Вопрос не слышно.
Нет.
Ваш вопрос не слышно, сам вопрос.
Мне нужно язык поменять, вы имеете в виду?
Нет, вопрос задавайте. Вы
Перевод.
хотите вопрос задать?
Нет. Ну, до этого я его слышал, когда он читал сообщение. Сейчас, вот я получил.
Амбриш Махарадж, вы меня слышите нормально?
Сейчас слышно
Амбриш
меня?
Махарадж, вы меня слышите, нет?
Ваш хорошо слышно, да.
Харе Кришна. Можно, да, вопрос?
Вопрос можно задать, да.
Вас не слышно. Так,
Ну, меня Амбариш Махарадж слышит.
слышит. Ну все, тогда задавайте вопрос, он
Алексей, наверное,
переведет.
когда задает вопрос, переключается на английский канал. Алексей, пожалуйста, не переключайтесь никуда. Как вы говорили, когда вы спрашивали, слышно вас или нет, так и говорите. Задавайте, пожалуйста, вопрос.
Перевод, так, русский. Тогда ладно, все, возвращаясь на русский. Сейчас меня можно задавать вопрос уже, все?
Можно.
Все. Харе Кришна, дорогой Гуру Махарадж, мои поклоны, пожалуйста, примите. И Амбариша Махарадж, пожалуйста, мои поклоны примите. Вот, я хотел задать такой вопрос. Вот сейчас Махарадж давал лекцию по поводу, ну, что все это воля Кришны. Я просто хочу на своем примере, ну, вот, понять глубже, как это. Вот я просто на протяжении там 4-5 лет хожу, распространяю, у меня мало берут книг. И я задумываюсь постоянно, ну, вот я думаю о том, что это воля Кришны, я понимаю, что это воля Кришны, что я не привязываюсь к результату, но я хочу больше как бы распространять, как мне правильно относиться, то есть все-таки это воля Кришны, или я прилагаю усилия, но все равно книг у меня мало берут, но...
Ну, давайте попробую перевести.
Ну да, как-то.
Please accept my humble obeisances. His name is Alexei from Rostov. He is leader of weekend warriors in Rostov. And for last 4 or 5 years, he's going out to distribute books, but results are quite small. And his question is how he can understand. He wants to distribute more. Is it the will of Krishna that he cannot distribute more, or how he can understand this?
Well, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 factors in the accomplishment of any work. One factor is the body that we have. So our body is always changing, but we're not exactly in control of entirely how it's going to change. Generally, it goes from boyhood to youth to old age with the corresponding changes. Similarly, there's something called the adichanantata karata, the self, ourselves. Now, our desire has a lot to do with what takes place, although we don't directly control the material or the spiritual nature. But Krishna is in our heart, and he senses our desire, just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it. And according to what we deserve, Krishna arranges the material nature accordingly. So a desire is very important. Now, how to develop desire? That's developed in association with those who have desire to do something. If you want to develop a desire to become an expert tennis player, then you associate with people who have that desire also to become an expert tennis player. So a sangha, by association, we develop desire. So we want to develop a desire to, in any field, we associate with people who are more expert in those fields than we are. And they can teach us how to develop that desire. And then additionally, to karanam, the senses that we have, and the relationship between the false ego and the material nature is another factor. And then, of course, ultimately, the supreme factor is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So whatever happens is the causes by Krishna's desire, but Krishna is also working with our desire. He's not indifferent to it. So we want to distribute more books, then we have to get trained up by devotees who are distributing more books than we are. Learn from them, associate with them, serve them, try to understand, pray to Krishna, because ultimately he's the determining factor. And the other thing is, why do we want to distribute more books? For pleasing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and assisting him as an instrument in his service, or for developing our false ego. Krishna is much more likely to reciprocate with us and give us the spiritual potency and send the people who are eligible to receive these books, or even not eligible, who will take the books by his desire, if we have the right attitude. But if we're trying to develop our false ego and developing it in terms of the number of books we're distributing and thinking ourselves to be better than other distributors or even better than ordinary living entities because we're a Maharati, a Maha book distributor, then Krishna probably will, as a priority, try to make us humble first before he tries to make us into a great Maharati. Even Arjuna, at the end of the pastimes he had with Krishna, although he was a great Maharati and was able to defeat by Krishna's will even great Maharatis like Bhishma Dev and Karna, still at the end of his pastimes, Krishna manifested himself as Aborigine cowherd men and stole the wives of Krishna when Arjuna was protecting them. So his Kandeva bow, his potency became nullified, as he said, like putting ghee on, clarified ghee on ashes. So at one moment he had amazing power, the next moment by Krishna's desire, he became powerless. So yes, we should try to distribute books. We should try to increase the number. We should follow the process of doing it, associate with those who are empowered themselves. At the same time, pray humbly for the mercy of Krishna and his representatives that we can be an instrument in their service, that we're not trying to take over Krishna's position as the savior. We're trying to be saved ourselves through the process of pure devotional service. Then Krishna may or may not empower us, but most likely he'll do that. If we really sincerely develop desire, Krishna will actually reciprocate with us. And if he doesn't, still we should be surrendered and simply accept. Probably gives the example, just like a cashier working in a bank. He may count millions of dollars or millions of rubles, but he doesn't consider even one of those rubles to belonging to himself. So similarly, we're distributing books not for our own glory, but to assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his service and his mission of bringing his other children back to the spiritual kingdom. So ultimately, it's all Krishna's benefit, and it's all the benefit of the souls that we're working with. And it's our benefit to have the right attitude and doing this a glorious service, but to do it with the right attitude. And part of that right attitude is be patient and accept whatever Krishna sends us, utilize that opportunity to service to the best of our ability, to please him. And if we try to please him to the best of our ability, we'll always remember him. And that will be our ultimate reward. Not the number of books that were distributed, but the fact that we're sincerely trying in all circumstances to try and please him. And therefore, by Krishna's mercy, always remembering him and always being satisfied in that association with Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, no matter what the results may be.
Next question is from Jagannath Priya Subhadra Devi Dasi. She is offering her obeisances and she is asking how we can practically develop humility and sincere desire to help people in the mood of serving Krishna.
Well, that's why we have association with devotees, to remind us of who we actually are. If we're reminded that 1/10,000th the size of the tip of your hair in size, it's extremely difficult to become too proud. We maybe think I'm 1/10,000th the size of the tip of your hair in size, but I'm twice as big as you are. But that's not very significant, actually. If in the association of devotees, we remember how wonderful and how great Krishna is, then it's very easy to be humble, because actually we're so insignificant compared to how great Krishna is. Where is there any opportunity to become proud? And as soon as we forget Krishna's greatness, and we forget how tiny we are, then of course we'll start taking credit and we'll start becoming proud. Not only proud of ourselves, which is not really possible because we're so tiny, we don't even know who we are, but we become proud of our so-called accomplishments. But actually, they're not our accomplishments. Everything is being done by Krishna, according to our karma and our desire. But we're not the direct cause of anything. What's being manifest in this world, as Krishna says, that he's the ability in man. He's the ability, whatever we're doing, he's the ability. We're simply the observers and the desirers, and the rest is carried out by Krishna, either through his material energy or his spiritual energy. But we're not directly involved in anything in this world. And when we think we are, then we start taking credit. Then it's pride, but it's also illusion. And we see how wonderful Krishna is doing things, and we take pride in that, how great Krishna is. That's proper pride. So we have to know, when we watch this body doing things, we watch our mind and intelligence working, we should take pride that it's Krishna is doing this to help deliver his children back to the spiritual kingdom. So pride in Krishna is allowed, taking credit for what Krishna is doing, and becoming proud of our so-called accomplishments. That's only under the illusory energy.
Подняла руку у нас премика, да, это санкиртана Петербург, санкиртана выходного дня. Вы будете, да, задавать свой вопрос вживую? Нужно микрофон тогда включить. У вас поднята рука, но не включен микрофон.
Спасибо большое за лекцию. У меня был вопрос.
Сейчас не слышно вас. Поближе задавайте вопрос.
Который задает сейчас искусственно. Все хорошо?
Харе Кришна.
Задавайте вопрос.
Кришна, спасибо большое за лекцию. Вы говорили, что книги лучше, чтобы человек брал их не из материальных мотивов, лучше презентовать книгу человека, чтобы он ее брал из правильного мотива, то есть чтобы это не было костной проповедью.
И вопрос в чем? Вопрос в чем, Харе Кришна? Я вот так и не услышал вопрос.
Did she ask a question?
As far as I have understood, she said that according to your class, it's better to distribute books that people would pay for the book. Is it correct understanding, or we can also distribute books for free?
Well, free, what we get for free, we don't value very much. What people pay for, they value much more. If you're on the street and you pass out 5,000 ruble notes to anyone who passes by, they'll start questioning, why is he doing this? They probably will call the police and have you arrested for doing it. So if we're distributing the most valuable information freely, people may take it as something very insignificant, especially if they could pay for it. Why should we not give them the opportunity to participate in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement? Because in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says people can serve by their wealth, their intelligence, their words, and by their life. So we should give people an opportunity to do service by giving some of their wealth for getting in exchange for the most valuable knowledge that Prabhupada is giving them. Then much more likely they'll be able to understand what's in the books if they actually perform devotional service, because it's only by devotional service that one can understand Krishna as he actually is. So we shouldn't deprive people of the opportunity to perform devotional service, at least in the beginning by giving some donation.
Next question. Так, Ананда Манджари, вы будете, да, задавать вопрос вживую? Нужно включить микрофон для того, чтобы задать вопрос. У вас поднятая рука. Ананда Манджари. Это из Владивостока, да? Так, поднятая рука. Но...
Харе Кришна. Слышно меня?
Да, слышно. Говорите.
Включите камеру еще, можете, Матаджи, надо Манджари.
Ага, сейчас.
Да, слышно.
Все, я включила камеру. Харе Кришна, дорогие вайшнавы. Примите мои поклоны. Все слава Шри Прабхупаде. Харе Кришна, Махарадж. Спасибо большое за лекцию. У меня вопрос про смирение. Мы знаем, что одно из определений смирения – это любовь. То есть любовь равно смирению. И если правильно я понимаю, что смирение, вот это вот, когда ты понимаешь, что все по милости, все успехи в санкиртане или в чем-либо, да, они происходят по милости Гуру и Кришны. И это невозможно искусственно сделать. То есть мы можем, я заметила по себе, что можно теоретически, допустим, думать, да, это по милости Гуру и Кришны мои результаты в санкиртане или в чем-либо, да, и в то же время продолжать гордиться. И вот это вот поразительный какой-то эффект такой, что на уровне ума и разума ты думаешь, что все Гуру и Кришне, результаты принадлежат, и что по их милости. И в этом как будто бы твое смирение проявляется. А с другой стороны, ты гордишься. И вот правильно ли я понимаю, что искусственно смирение не разовьешь, что это происходит как следствие определенного этапа развития. И вопрос в чем? можно ли как-то ускорить развитие этого смирения? Ну, чтобы понимать, что действительно все по милости Гуру и Кришны, ну, именно хорошее происходит. Спасибо.
Ananda Manjari, she is from Vladivostok, one of the oldest book distributors in Vladivostok. Her question about humility, she is saying that superficially sometimes we are offering our results to Guru and Krishna and we are thinking this everything is their mercy, but in our heart we still thinking that we are proud that I am doing such big service. So her question is it some natural development of humility? Humility comes on its own, or we can do something that acquires this humility more quickly?
Humility comes from proper understanding. We understand things properly, and naturally we'll be humble. Not only understand, but realize, as we realize, as I said, how great Krishna is, how everything that's happening under his direction, by his desire, and that we're simply participating by agreeing to become the instrument of Guru and Krishna and our acharyas. Everything else is arranged by Krishna. Therefore, when we see this wonderful universe that we're living in, we understand it's Krishna's universe. We're put here and given an opportunity to serve him in this universe by developing the proper desire. And part of that proper desire is to see everything properly. So as soon as we take credit for what Krishna is doing, then we become a thief and we'll be chastised by the illusory energy. So the illusory energy will help us put us back into perspective again, or it will try to put us back into the proper understanding. And when Krishna sees that we're sincerely developing a desire to serve Guru and Krishna, then Krishna reciprocates and enlivens us with more and more understanding of that, of how great Krishna is and how great Krishna's devotees are and how we're completely dependent upon them all the time. And therefore, love for Krishna and humility develop simultaneously. As we love Krishna more, then naturally we'll become humble. And as we see how great Krishna is, then we'll love him more. So they go side by side. In the spiritual world, Krishna's internal energy, the full manifestation of Ishmati Radharani, she loves Krishna unlimitedly the most, but she's also the most humble. So we can't develop love without humility. We can't develop humility without proper love also. So they go side by side.
So next question is not related to book distribution, about allopathic medicine. What should be our, should we have trust in allopathic medicine? What should be our attitude towards allopathic doctors?
Well, we should, if we don't know anything about medicine, then we'll probably, well, the actual science of medicine is given in the Vedic literature. Krishna gives throughout the Bhagavad Gita the science of medicine, where he says one shouldn't eat too much or eat too little, sleep too much or sleep too little. One who's temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, work, and recreation can mitigate the material pains by practice of the yoga system. And other parts, Krishna says that one should learn, man has to elevate himself by his own mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For one who conquered his mind, man must elevate himself by his own mind, not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul, his enemy as well. For one who's conquered the mind, it becomes the best of friends. And for one who's failed to do so, it's the greatest enemy. So psychological problems, physical problems, is due to violations, mainly of the laws of material nature, Krishna's laws. Allopathic medicine is a godless medicine. It doesn't recognize the soul, doesn't recognize the super soul, doesn't recognize the supreme soul. It's simply a mechanistic science, a godless mechanistic so-called science. Or as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the foolish, they cannot understand how the living entity quits his body or what kind of body they enjoy under the spell of the modes of nature. But those whose eyes are trained with knowledge can see all this clearly. So such a science can't discriminate between one body and the next. Every body is the same. Everybody is the same modes of nature, same doshas, everything's the same. It's just a machine. So it's not really a science. It's a speculation based upon empirical evidence, which has 4 defects: imperfect senses, being subject to illusion, being making mistakes, and cheating. So that's more or less like all the material sciences, so-called sciences, are all afflicted by these 4 defects. Now, allopathic medicine has taken over some of the fields that previously Ayurveda used to be predominant in. For instance, trauma. If someone gets run over by a car or has some kind of traumatic injury, then allopathic medicine for such a situation is the only available medicine in most cases to deal with such situations. But in terms of chronic illnesses, allopathic medicine has the wrong vision of the world. It has the wrong understanding of how the body works. And therefore, generally speaking, it causes more problems than it solves. They don't understand that the root cause of disease is physical and mental indigestion, how that when it's not resolved, when one doesn't follow the laws of Krishna or the laws of nature, how that develops into indigestion by irregular habits in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, which develops into allergy, which develops into autoimmune diseases and rheumatoid arthritis and things like that, and finally into even more serious diseases like heart diseases and cancer and other kinds of very serious chronic diseases, all based upon indigestion physically and mentally. And since they don't know that, and since in the most part, those who are practicing it are simply there to make money, it's a business, and because their main mechanism to get people to follow their system is fear, putting people in fear and anxiety, for the most part, it acts negatively upon people. But because people don't know things as they are, and because most people don't have controlled mind and senses, they don't know that the root cause of disease is illicit sex, killing animals, intoxication, and mental speculation and gambling. Because they don't give these things up, or they're not willing to. Therefore, allopathic medicine is not only usually a failure, but people are putting false faith in a system that doesn't work, that actually is detrimental. And for that reason, people's life expectancy is decreasing. And because they've become very proud of their so-called scientific advancement, and they're advertising greatly. They have the means of mass propaganda because they've taken over the medical schools, they've taken over the mass media, because they've taken over the government agencies. Therefore, people are becoming more and more deluded into taking shelter of his demoniac sciences. And therefore, they're becoming misled and actually being put into more and more serious and dangerous situations. So again, allopathic medicine has its place in modern medicine, especially in treating with traumatic injuries. But when they start dealing with chronic illness, they don't deal with the proper mentality, they don't deal with the diet, the regulations, the following regular principles. Therefore, at best, they could be useless. at worst, their techniques are harmful. In America, there are three major causes of death. One of them is cancer, the other is heart disease, and the third is medical injuries caused by mistreatment or malpractice of the doctors and by prescribing prescription medicine that has actually kills people. Legal prescription medicine that leads people to death. So taking shelter of a industry that is one of the leading causes of death itself is probably not the wisest thing to do, but sometimes it's the only alternative that people have because they don't have a qualified doctor to help them. And therefore, even if we're going to use the services of allopathic medicine, if that's the only thing available, according to the Ayurvedic scriptures, Charak Samhita, there are four pillars of treatment. One of them is the doctor, one of them is the nurse, one of them is the patient, the other is the medicine. So at least we should try to choose a doctor where he actually thinks, according to the Hippocratic Oath, that my first business is to do no harm, and not a doctor who thinks that my first business is to make money from my patients. Of course, that's increasingly difficult in modern society because at least in the Western world, all the doctors are being paid from a system which only allows what's called protocols. As soon as they get a symptom, they're obliged to follow a certain treatment. And even if the treatment is not going to be effective, they're obliged to follow it anyhow. And that's usually for the detriment to the patient rather than for its well-being. As I said, generally speaking, allopathic medicine is more concerned about making money as a whole than it is about treating the patients individually. And because they don't have a vision, actually what the actual process of disease is, therefore they have very little ability to actually affect an actual cure. What they're most expert at generally is covering over the symptoms. And by doing so, they usually cause other problems.
Next question is about boiling the milk. At some point, Srila Prabhupada said that we have enough devotees, we have to boil the milk, we have to educate them, and how we can keep balance between preaching and between educating those who already joined.
Well, Prabhupada had the Transcendental Sandwich morning program. Then he had our service, somehow or another assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Then we have our evening program. So we hear in the morning, we serve in the afternoon, and we hear again in the evening before we go to sleep and dream about Krishna in our service the next day.
Next question, how we can properly introduce the books in order to people who take book with understanding what is this book about, not motivate them materially.
Well, be nice to people. Prabhupada said, be a gentleman or a lady. And at the same time, we need three things: patience, conviction, and enthusiasm. If we can display what's in the books, we can display the patience, the conviction, and the enthusiasm. That's the best way of getting people to be interested in the book. And of course, if we have programs for people to introduce them to our philosophy, new people, specifically for new people, so that we can explain to them if they have some interest in what's in the book, then we can give them an invitation to come. And we can, if they do read the books, if they have an interest, we can further that interest by introducing what is Krishna consciousness and what they can do individually in their homes to practice Krishna consciousness, and what they can do to serve collectively in the institution called ISKCON. But if we just distribute books and we don't have programs to explain these books to people, then it won't be, our book distribution won't be so effective as it could be.
Ананда Манджари, у вас еще вопрос, да? Включайте микрофон.
Да, к вопросу о смирении. Спасибо большое, что дали еще раз возможность спросить. То смирение, про которое говорил Махарадж, вот, и я согласна полностью с этим. В то же время у меня вот какой вопрос. Есть такой пример, история с Нарада Муни и змеей, которая хотела стать его ученицей, и Нарада Муни дал ей наставление, чтобы та перестала жалить, да, людей. Она перестала жалить, и ее стали забивать. И тогда она уже полумертвая приползла к Нарада Муни и сказала, что такое, Махарадж, как я могу дальше жить? Вот так вот. И он сказал, ну я же тебе не сказал не распускать капюшон. И вот вопрос в связи с чем? Вот это вот наставление Нарада Муни не распускать капюшон, это относится к какому уровню развития? Канишха, Мадхьяма или Уттама Адхикари? Спасибо.
Her question about the story of Narada Muni preaching to the snake. He told the snake that she should not bite anybody if she wants to become a disciple. And when she came back, the snake, she complained that now she is being beaten. And Narada Muni said that you can use your hood in order to scare the people, but you should not bite. So what is the level on which we can have such a humility that we will not even use our hood? We just would accept everything that is coming to us as Krishna's mercy. Is it the level of Kanishta, Madhyama, or Uttama Adhikari?
No, we don't. We're not artificially trying to become or pretend we're Uttama Adhikaris. We have to act on the level that we're actually on. And if putting up the hood is necessary, we should do that. This is not our body, it belongs to Krishna. And the level we're on, we should try to protect it. And Sanatana Swami wanted to commit suicide because he was diseased, and was, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him, his itching sores would ooze over Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body. So he decided that he'd commit suicide under the wheels of the Jagannath cart. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't approve of that, because he said, you have no right to destroy another person's property. That this body that you have actually belongs to me, and I plan to use it in different ways. So in order to protect the body, Krishna's body, we have to put up our hood. We should do that. We shouldn't artificially pretend that we're Uttama Adhikaris. Because when we're not only we won't be doing our service to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu properly by protecting his body, but we'll be doing a disservice by imitating a pure devotee. And that won't help us, it'll degrade us. It won't help the person who's attacking us, because they'll be committing an offense, and we'll be committing an offense by not doing our duty properly. So we should know what our position is, and we should act accordingly. We shouldn't imitate a person on a higher level. We should be happy doing our service on whatever level we're on.
Махарадж, можно я уточню? Преданные, можно уточнить сейчас?
Да. Давайте.
Спасибо. А если это происходит в обществе преданных, что ну, кто-то, допустим, в течение многих лет просит у преданных прощения, ну, около 20-25 лет, и преданный уже привыкает, что он просит вечно прощения, а потом, когда уже он чувствует, что, ну, просто вокруг него какие-то тучи уже образуются, он начинает, ну, можно ли вот такие моменты все-таки прояснять ситуации, выводить преданных на разговоры, как бы, вот, знаете, прояснять, чтобы не было вот каких-то, ну, как бы, недоразумений, недоговоров и так далее. Это, и в этом вот преданный видит, что он распускает капюшон. Вот. Вот можно ли так делать? Прояснять, проявлять истину.
Her question is about particular situation when a devotee for many years, like 20 years, every time she meets devotees here asking about forgiveness, but at some point she is getting to a really difficult situation in his association with devotees, and what he should do in this situation, because before he was asking for forgiveness, can he speak with them openly to understand why they are not happy with him, to understand
with her or him?
She is not given particular situation in general.
Tony boot. Okay. No, we should always ask. We should always inquire. People say, forgive me. Forgive you for what? They ask for blessings. Blessings for what? We should know what people are asking for. Otherwise, it makes no sense. When Prabhupada was on a train one time, and some Indian gentleman wanted to come and meet with him to have his darshan, who are another car in the train. Prabhupada's disciples who were serving him didn't let them come on. But somehow or another, they caught Prabhupada's eyes. So Prabhupada was obliged to allow them to come and to get his darshan. So when they came, they asked for Prabhupada's blessings. And Prabhupada said, what blessings do you want? So they're quite surprised, because generally people go to a sadhu and ask for blessings, and the sadhu never questions what blessings they're asking for. But in this case, Prabhupada questioned, what kind of blessings do you want? So one man said, I want my daughter to get married. So expensive, the dowry nowadays. Another one said, I have a wart on my foot. It's very difficult to get free from it. So I need your blessing, Swamiji. So Prabhupada turned to his sannyas disciples and pointed out their colored cloth and said, this is my blessings, sannyas. And they looked at Prabhupada and folded their hands. They said, Swamiji, it's getting very late. You look tired. I think we'll come back for your blessings later. And they quickly left the car, never to return again. So we should know what kind of blessings people want and what kind of blessings we're willing to give them. We should know why they're asking for forgiveness and see if actually we can forgive them. Or if there's anything to forgive, or just sentiment.
Next question. Shall devotees learn different techniques how to distribute books, or we should just have faith that Krishna is doing everything? So where is our responsibility?
Well, see Krishna's ability in man. He may be doing everything, but he's not doing everything equally. They're simultaneously one and different. Everything's not the same. There's a difference too. So Krishna's mission is to distribute as many books as possible, reach as many conditioned souls as possible. And some people are more expert at doing it. They know how to do it better than we do. So we should learn from them how to do it.
Next question is about preachers who are putting on the first place money. So how we can really serve people and not demand the money? being the preachers.
Well, we're not against Lakshmi Devi, but we want Lakshmi with Narayan. So Narayan is being presented in the form of these books. So we want people to love Narayan. Not simply wrench Lakshmi from them. We want to give them Narayans so they can actually appreciate Narayan. So we're giving them the most valuable book. And if we are intelligent enough, we can invoke some kind of enthusiasm on people's parts that they're willing to give up, surrender the Lakshmi that they've stolen from Narayan. Of course, sometimes people are not so intelligent, and sometimes we may somehow or another try to induce them to give a little bit more donation, but it shouldn't be done in such a way as to discourage them from appreciating the value of the book. That they later on become disappointed or feel they've been forced to do something. And therefore, instead of valuing the association of devotees, they see the devotees as being aggressive, trying to take something from them rather than trying to give them something to them. So I think we can stop there. Are there many more questions?
Questions are finished.
Okay, so I think we can stop there.
Тогда мы на этом...
Спасибо. Шрила Прабhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaur Premanande Haribo.
Харе Кришна, Гуру Махарадж.
Харе Кришна, спасибо большое.
Харе Кришна.
Харе Кришна. Всем спасибо.
Харе Кришна, спасибо большое.